Hello, my name is Griet Bonne. I'm a PhD researcher at Ghent University, and today I will present Moved by Rubens, the double logic of image perception in the age of mechanical reproduction between 1877 and 1977. The Baroque painter Peter Paul Rubens created an impressive oeuvre in appearance, quantity, and geographical dispersion. During his travel to Italy, Rubens extensively copied Renaissance masters such as Tintoretto and Titian. The latter's collaboration with the Flemish engraver Cornelis Cort also provided the blueprint for Rubens' well-organized reproduction practice. Rubens became one of the first Flemish masters who consciously engaged with the reproducibility of his work, through prints produced and disseminated in his studio. Rubens employed multiple craftsmen to translate the pictorial qualities and subtle tonalities of the painted composition into a purely linear black and white medium. He left little to the imagination of the executor and kept a strict supervision on the quality of the print by correcting every shade of the plate until it reached the final version. By the end of his life, Rubens' work was dispersed over the European continent, not only through commissions in the framework of diplomatic missions, but also via prints. Through graphic reproductions, Rubens' vast oeuvre took shape. What Rubens set in motion is a double logic of image perception. Through their remediation, reproductions initiate a centrifugal movement that spreads the work's image towards a broader audience, simultaneously causing a centripetal force that enables us to see and approach these images as part of a comprehensive oeuvre. The double logic of image perception is hence a Western, sociocultural mechanism that describes a mutual interplay between the trajectory of pictorial media and people. The centrifugal movement is first of all a technological movement involving the accumulation and dispersion of an artwork's image by remediating it. After Rubens' death in 1640, the amount of reproductions of his work gradually multiplied, but it is not until the 1870s that the amount of reproductions grew exponentially. The festivities organized for his 300th birthday celebration had a significant impact on the quantitative expansion of reproductions, coinciding with a shift from graphic to photographic reproduction techniques. Since the birth of photography, its potential as a reproduction medium was recognized, but it is only around 1870 that the by then mass-produced photographs could successfully and without fading capture oil paintings in full detail and color shades. Compared to engravings, photographic representations were no more realistic nor objective in this early stage. Moreover, unlike the mechanically made photographs, the labor-intensive craftsmanship that was involved in the graphic process granted the engraving authenticity. Consequently, photography had to compete its predecessor with another type of authenticity. By creating a relatively fast and cheap procedure, it exchanged an erratic feel for the promise of a truthful image. The true difference of photography's impact lies not so much in its ability to consistently represent the original image, as well in its mobility. Photographs traveled more easily, and especially when its technology became adapted to the printing press, photomechanical pictures generated a visual testimony of cultures, and allowed these images to blend in with and hence define the inherently hybrid nature of modernity. Unlike the originals, we do not encounter photomechanical reproductions isolated, separated from everyday life. Mostly, photomechanical reproductions are offered to us as synoptic representations by printed media, which as a newly established unity can be distributed again. In magazines, postcards, and art books, the meaning of images changes through their juxtaposition to other images. This potential to present new visual unities was increased by the advent of the moving camera, which generated visual knowledge not only through the montage of various images, but also by decomposing a single artwork. Film's potential as a medium for art analysis resulted in the foundation of the Fédération Internationale du Film sur l'Art. On its first conference in Paris in 1948, Louvre's chief conservator of painting, René Wiege, reported enthusiastically about the possibilities of the new medium. After making one of the first art films in color, Rubens et son temps, in 1938, he explained, quote, "People do not generally know how to look at pictures. The film enables us to hold the spectator's eye and guide it step by step through the descriptive and visual detail of a work of art." End quote. Also in 1948, Paul Hazard and Harry Stork made Rubens, a film praised and criticized for its radical formalist approach and educational tone. Through its generous use of cinematographic techniques, the film became one of the main representatives of a new genre, instigating the discussion whether the art film should be seen as a pure registration of art, or if these films could claim artistic qualities themselves. Being disseminated all over the world, film did not so much affect the amount of people that saw art through reproductions, as it increased the amount of people that saw them simultaneously. For Walter Benjamin, this collective perception was key to generate a distracted reception of art in an everyday context. However, the architecture of the movie theater is designed to cut off reality and arouse individually lived experiences rather than collective ones. In the dark of the movie theater, the communal space dissolves into the mental space of the individual. Hence, the immersive attractiveness of cinematic reproductions lies not so much in their truthful representation of the original, but in the reproduction of a genuine experience of that image. Using the same mechanical device as photography, the newly generated pictures mobilize art differently because of their distinct physical appearance. Whereas photomechanical reproductions travel to us as tactile objects, cinematic reproductions are conveyed via projection in a darkened room. As Belting analyzes, quote, "The film medium does not consist of matter, the film on the reel. In order to become a medium, the film requires technological animation. In the viewer, it creates the impression that the fleeting images flowing before his eyes are nothing other than his own images, like the ones he experiences in imagination and in dreams." End quote. Not only do cinematic reproductions, in contrast to the originals to which they refer, appear as moving and ephemeral, the film medium accumulates images in time rather than space. A photograph always depicts a crystallized moment that irreversibly belongs to the past. It is only through its mobilization in space that the photograph actualizes itself and reaffirms its presence. Cinematic reproductions, by contrast, have no past. Due to their technological animation, they can only appear in the now, and as the images unravel, they leave no tactile trace for the viewer to hold on to. Shown before feature films, short art documentaries became an important tool of the post-war cultural policy to educate and enlighten the people. Before the true massification of reproductions, we had to wait for the advent of television in the 1950s and its ability to simultaneously disperse images in time and space. Like film, televised images succeed each other in time, that is, real time, making them even more elusive and immaterial. On the other hand, these images enter the social space of everyday life. In our private living rooms, they become part of the spatio-temporal continuity that is generated by the flow of images on our television screen, and which we have synoptically indicated as reality. Through television, fine art's most enigmatic images became part of a collective memory. The centripetal movement, directly related to the quantity and scope of the circulating reproductions, unfolded itself in two stages. Firstly, by comparing and collecting reproductions, similarities become apparent, converging in the master's œuvre. Secondly, the conception of the oeuvre, the identification with a certain artist, and the positioning of artworks within this oeuvre of that artist draws the attention back to the singular must-see original. Following Dean McCannell's influential The Tourist, the second stage has only been fully realized through mechanical means, and moreover requires certain social conditions that are emerging in a post-industrial society, and which indicate a shift from labor to leisure as a defining element of social relations. McCannell subsequently analyzes the tourist as an archetype of the leisure class, and sightseeing as a modern ritual. Moderns travel to sites, looking for attractions in search for authentic experiences, namely contemplating the masterpiece. The value of these experiences is directly related to the amount of cultural productions organized to coordinate the mechanism of sightseeing. It is clear that the double logic of image perception is intensified during cultural productions such as the Rubens centennials. The 1877 celebration was one of the biggest cultural events of 19th century Antwerp. The program combined folk festivities with an art program, including among others 3 art exhibitions. For the occasion, the city was decorated with triumphal arches, and a historical parade marched through the streets of Antwerp in an attempt to incorporate an art historical awareness to the lively Rubens cult. Especially the organized Congrès Artistique indicates how the celebrations embrace the potential of mechanical reproductions for documentary and archival purposes. In its ambitious invitation letter, we read a confidence in modernity as the only way to get grip on the past. Quote, "In this ardent melee which marks our time in transition, we should ask ourselves if it is not appropriate to establish our ties of affiliation with the past, and while claiming the glorious heritage of our ancestors, to let largely penetrate the powerful breed of modern ideas." End quote. Although mechanical reproductions were explicitly present in the scientific part of the centennial and were used as stand-ins for the originals in some of the exhibitions, the use of mechanical reproductions was not yet explicitly visible in the streets. During the festivities, the mass approached reproductions much in the same way as they approached the originals. Mechanical reproductions mainly enhanced the comprehensiveness towards the vastness of Rubens' œuvre, which led to a gradual development of the first stage of the centripetal movement. In the course of 100 years, the second stage was elaborated to reach its apex during the 400th birthday celebrations. Compared to the previous centennial, the 1977 program was much more composed as a year-long art festival scattered around the city. Concerts, theater plays, walking tours, and no less than 17 exhibitions were framing Rubens and his time. Besides an academic colloquium, UNESCO organized a series of lectures, claiming the cosmopolitan diplomat as an ideal ambassador. Never had there been so many experts, knowledge, and artworks assembled so close to Rubens' former studio. But although Antwerp remained the main site, the festivities exceeded the local scale, and substantial exhibitions on Rubens were organized in major museums all over Europe. The Rubens year did not only reach further in geographical terms, but also visually by means of mechanical reproductions. In 1977, Rubens was incontournable. Reproductions were sold in all souvenir shops next to Rubens beer and Rubens pie, triggering a self-conscious reflex in exhibitions such as The Fame of Rubens and Rubens Now, a Concept or a Commodity. The Belgian television broadcaster frequently reported about the festivities and made 2 educational documentaries that were also screened in several exhibitions. The radio service published a slide series to be used in classrooms. BBC and other foreign broadcasters followed Belgium's lead. Dean McCannell rightfully stated, quote, "It is the mechanical reproduction phase of sacralization that is most responsible for setting the tourist in motion on his journey to find the true object. And he is not disappointed. Alongside the copies of it, it has to be the real thing." End quote. Mechanical reproductions serve as markers that, instead of desacralizing artworks, as Benjamin suggested, constitute the aura of the original by creating the desire to be as near as possible to the original picture of that reproduction. Boris Groys agrees with McCannell, stating that the aura, quote, "emerges precisely at the very moment it is fading," end quote. In other words, only because of the multiplication via copies, an original becomes unique. Griet understands the difference between original and copy, therefore, as a topological question. The original acquires aura through a fixed context, whereas reproductions indicate displacement and circulation. Rolf Bott's examination of postcards form an interesting case study to examine this topological dynamic. Bought as a souvenir, postcards also indicate what one should see while being on site. By sending postcards to our beloved ones at home, we deliver proof of our experiences as, quote, "The picture on the front of the card advertised the act of travel, and the postmark on the back certified it as authentic," end quote. In the act of replication, however, the photomechanical picture does not show us the lived images transferred to us in front of the original, but an idealized, equally lit version that was taken from a neutral perspective. Not only does the postcard fail to evoke what we have seen, it even comes to define this experience by showing us how to approach the artwork and what to remember of it. The commodification of mechanical reproductions is hence a solution to what Benjamin observed as, quote, "the desire of contemporary masters to bring things closer, spatially and humanly, which is just as ardent as their bent towards overcoming the uniqueness of every reality by accepting its reproduction," end quote. Disregarding the ideological appropriation of this process, Benjamin underestimated the impact of manifestations such as the Rubens celebrations, organized by the governing authorities to structure these attempts at self-legitimation and thereby assure their central position within this reality. Because of the quantity of works, the international scope of his career, and the numerous collaborations with renowned apprentices, collecting Rubens' œuvre in one visual space seems an impossible task. However, the lure for completeness and the attractiveness of its impossibility led to a remarkable proposal in the context of the 1877 celebration. The Belgian photographer Joseph Maes launched the idea for a 4-year reproduction tour throughout Europe to create an encyclopedia of Rubens' paintings. The journey would have resulted in a photo exhibition of 1,000 photo-autotypes mounted on Chinese paper. As venue for this exhibition, Maes had Rubens' former house in mind that, in his words, should, quote, "be acquired by the city to exhibit in his own home the reproductions of the masterpieces which his genius mind had dreamed of, which he gave birth to," end quote. The proposal got rejected, presumably because of financial and practical objections. In 1977, a similar yet opposite idea for a photo exhibition was launched. Similar in its attempt to generate a comprehensive overview of Rubens' stylistic development, but whereas in 1877 Maes intended to travel in order to bring Rubens' œuvre to Antwerp, the city now organized a traveling photo exhibition to bring Rubens' work from Antwerp collections abroad. The exhibition existed in multiple editions of full-color and life-size reproductions. If the size of the painting did not allow for a one-on-one reproduction, a full-size detail was taken and compared to a complete reproduction in reduced size. Mounted on large panels, the exhibition was adaptable to different settings and was dispersed to Belgian companies, cultural centers, and small museums abroad. The project perfectly resonates the double logic of image perception. On the one hand, it intended to bring Rubens to these places where his inventions could not be directly perceived. On the other hand, the exhibition wanted to attract people to the true Rubens city. Photo exhibitions offer new insights in the mechanism of image perception. Not only do they mobilize a double logic, they demonstrate how mechanical reproductions themselves become originals. According to Boris Griet, quote, "we're not only able to produce a copy out of an original by a technique of reproduction, but we also are able to produce an original out of a copy by a technique of topological relocation of this copy, that is, by a technique of installation," end quote. The photo exhibitions are essentially conceived as installations that offer a genuine view on Rubens' praxis. Using state-of-the-art technology, Joseph Maes' proposal aimed to assemble a unique collection of high-quality reproductions, and the original studio setting in which these pictures would have been shown was meant to confirm their authenticity. Similarly, the 1977 exhibition clearly affirmed the quality of the large full-color pictures. Their materiality and size contrasted the variety of cheap imagery disseminated during the Rubens year. In contrast to the reproductions in the streets, the images in the photo exhibition were meant to be contemplated as originals. The 1977 photo exhibition, which was conceived as a traveling format, therefore positioned itself somewhere in between authentic installation and emancipatory copy, and this ambiguous status might have been the reason for its limited success. The photo exhibitions reveal yet another impact of mechanical reproductions. Over the course of 100 years, not only their trajectory had shifted, but also the formal and material characteristics of the image had changed significantly, from small-size black and white reproductions to full-color one-on-one details. Subsequently, the centrifugal movement of mechanical reproductions did not only bring us to the authentic originals, now they become the reference point to approach these originals. A review on the 1977 traveling exhibition in the French newspapers is revealing. Quote, "What is curious is that the œuvre, reduced in their dimensions, appear to me more readable, the eye embracing the whole composition better than while in front of the originals. I remember having admired the works in the Antwerp Cathedral, but with the feeling of being overwhelmed by their dimensions, which felt like an obstacle to grasp the unity of the composition." Apparently, by 1977, an intelligible reproduction in a familiar modern medium is favored over the dazzling monumental comprehensiveness of the original. So, are we still truly moved by Rubens? Hans Belting rightfully observes that, quote, "We are more familiar with the medium, the means of transmission, than we are with the images that are transmitted. In fact, in order to believe images, we require that they come to us through familiar, accepted media." End quote. What we look for in the original and what we remember from this experience is highly influenced by its modern mediation through mechanical reproductions, which develop not only in relation to the originals, but also in the interplay between different media. Throughout the 20th century, reproduction media evolved towards more realistic, accurate and truthful representations. But photomechanical reproductions also increasingly evolved according to a new vision generated by the moving, hypermediated frame of film and television. While claiming a certain transparency and objectivity, the use of details in the 1977 photo exhibition implies a reframing of the work and hence the loss of its inherent harmony. We can conclude that between 1877 and 1977, mechanical reproductions brought us both closer to and further away from the original perception of Rubens' œuvre. The centennials converged Rubens' images, both reproductions and original, in one city, and at the same time dispersed his remediate image, both the œuvre and persona, on a global scale. This is the double logic of image perception in modern society. A continual reciprocity of images and people that mobilizes our reception of art. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. I'm very much looking forward to your comments and questions.